Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. 1. Introduction. In the past, the wetlands were regarded as wasted lands since these were viewed as polluted, muddy, swampy, bug-infested waters. These were regarded as the habitat of many diseases causing mosquitoes and source of foul smell. These were also blamed for causing diseases like malaria. Hence, most of the times these were drained off or filled with soil or built over. Fortunately, scientists in the last few decades have realized the importance of wetlands. The wetlands are now considered as distinct ecosystems with specific ecological characteristics, functions, and values. They have recognized wetlands as one of the most productive ecosystems of Earth. These serve many functions ranging from the food and wood for local communities to many ecosystems and environmental services. Wetlands are commonly referred to as nature's kidneys as these remove harmful materials from water such as excess nutrients, pollutants, and contaminants. Despite many services provided by wetlands, these are under threat due to unsustainable use, lack of conservation and management of these biodiversity-rich areas. In the previous module we have defined wetlands, discussed their types and classification and their functions or benefits. This module will discuss in detail about threats to wetlands, why to conserve and manage them, what can be done. The latter part of the module will discuss about the wetlands in Indian perspective. 2. Threats to wetlands. According to World Wildlife Fund report, wetlands are the one of the most endangered ecosystems of the world. Though they are endowed with a rich biodiversity, yet of late they are being greatly exploited. As per some reports, half of the wetlands have disappeared since starting of 19th century. Conversion of wetlands for commercial development, water diversion, excessive hunting and overfishing, excessive tourism, commercial exploitation, extraction of nutrients, pesticide discharges from intensive agriculture, toxic pollutants from industrial waste, and the construction of dams and dikes, etc. are major threats to wetlands. These are discussed in detail as follow. Human population and development. One of the major threats to wetlands comes from the ever-increasing population, which puts pressure on land usage directly and indirectly. The need for more land for housing, urbanization, industrial development, agriculture leads to destruction of these wetlands. The usage of these sites for other purposes not only destroys Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. The wetlands but also leads to habitat destruction of flora and fauna present in these wetlands. The developmental activities can cause changes in river flows, more sedimentation, increase in nutrients, changes in salt levels in water, etc. The activities may also lead to outbreaks of pests and weeds and toxic blue-green algae. These toxic algae may kill the flora and fauna of the wetland and make water unsuitable for urban, agricultural and recreational uses. River regulation and water diversion. The alteration of natural flow of rivers, streams, floodplains and their regulation are the biggest threats to wetlands. The most common reasons for the alteration are constructing dams and other structures on rivers. River regulation and water diversion are carried out to make water available for hydropower plants, urban, industrial and agricultural uses. The changes in the water course leads to drying of the wetlands. The river regulation and water diversion can result in dying of plants and animals, decline in fishes and consequently water birds dependent on fishes for their food, etc. Weeds and pest animals. Weeds compete with native wetland species for resources and habitats and displace them in the process. The common wetland weeds found are flowering plant lantana, floating fern salvinia, seaweed caulerpa, etc. Similarly, pest animals also lead to destruction of habitat of native animals. Climate change. The climate change is another big threat to wetlands. The climate change has led to changes in rainfall pattern, temperature fluctuations, evaporation rate, etc. These changes not only affect water availability but also adaptability of the native biodiversity. Pollution. The discharge of industrial effluents and agriculture runoff into wetland reservoirs alternate its water quality. This also affects the population of several sensitive species. Agriculture runoff water rich in nitrates and phosphates often leads to accelerated eutrophication of natural wetlands. The uncontrolled growth of weeds and consequent decay also cause dying of wetlands. Siltation. Uncontrolled siltation reduces the shallowness and water holding capacity of wetlands. This reduces the amount of available water during dry period. Vegetation damage. The activities that can damage wetland vegetation are overgrazing, removal of vegetation for peat mining, etc. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Political and socio-economic issues. Although rules and regulations exist for the protection of wetlands but non-implementation of legislation properly leads to interruption in their management process. Political will and interference is also a hurdle in many countries for effective measures for their management. The lack or shortage of funding to tackle threats is also a reason. Limited awareness and public participation. Another key issue that impairs wetland conservation and restoration is the lack of awareness and limited participation of local communities and stakeholders. Further, the conflicting interests between the locals, stakeholders make this task even more difficult to achieve. The quantity of water present and the timing of its presence in part determine the functions of a wetland and its role in the environment. Even wetlands that appear dry at times for significant parts of the year such as vernal pools often provide critical habitat for wildlife adapted to breeding exclusively in these areas. 3. Wetland restoration. What can be done? Wetland restoration involves renewing a degraded wetland to its pre-existing, naturally functioning conditions or a condition as close to that as possible. All restoration projects require planning, implementation, monitoring, management and team with expertise in ecology, hydrology, engineering and environmental planning. Reduce pollution. Minimize anthropogenic activity. Prevent overgrazing. Protection laws and government initiatives. Proper planning and monitoring building awareness. 4. Wetlands. Indian perspective. India is very rich in wetland habitats and almost all states have wetlands. These exhibit different ecological diversities, climatic conditions and changing topography. These are located in different geographical regions of India ranging from Himalayas to Deccan Plateau. As per the estimates of Space Applications Center Report 2011, the area of wetlands in India varies from 1% to 5% of total geographical area. The wetlands in India support nearly 20% of Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. The known biodiversity. According to WWF India, wetlands are one of the most threatened of all ecosystems in India. Out of several wetlands in India, Chilka Lake in the state of Orissa is the largest one. It was designated as Ramsar site in 1991 and has magnificent unique biological diversity of its own type, ecological complexity and sustainability. 26 sites have been designated as Ramsar sites wetlands in India. Indian wetlands, on the basis of topographical variation, can be divided into 4 major types. 1. Himalayan wetlands. 2. Wetlands in the Gangetic Plain. 3. Wetlands in the desert. 4. Coastal wetlands. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. 5. Wetlands of international importance in India. Source. Map is created using QGIS. Indian wetlands under Ramsar list. 1. Chilika Lake. On the 1st of January 1981, one of the largest brackish water body, Chilika Lake was selected under Ramsar list of wetlands. Chilika Lake is spread over 1165 sq. km during monsoon and 906 sq. km during summer. From the east coast of Odisha state, Chilika Lake is connected with Bay of Bengal through a 35 km narrow channel. Fresh water in Chilika Lake is supplied by the Daya and Bhargavi rivers from the Indian mainland. The large water filler area of Chilika Lake hosts many migratory birds and provide habitat to local fauna like dolphin, ducks, flamingos, pelicans. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Plovers, gulls, etc. Various flora varieties like Holopoda ovata, Cladocera, Potamogeddon, etc. are also found in Chilika Lake. 2. Ecology National Park. It is located on the confluence of 2 rivers, namely, Gambar and Banganga in Bharatpur district of Rajasthan. In the year 1981, this park has been selected under Ramsar list. An amazing diversity of flora and fauna have been found here due to availability of unique habitats including wetlands, woodlands, scrubs, forests and grasslands. Ecology National Park's flora consists of about 375 species of angiosperms, out of which 90 species are found in wetland areas. The fauna includes more than 350 species of birds, 27 species of mammals, 42 species of raptors and 9 species of owls, 7 species of amphibians, 13 species of reptiles, 71 species of butterflies, 58 species of fishes, more than 30 species of dragonflies and more than 30 species of spiders. Ecology National Park has got the title of Birder's Paradise due to abundance of birds. 3. Willar Lake. It is a large freshwater lake of Jammu and Kashmir state, approximately 18,900 hectares in area. It absorbs high flood water of the river Jhelum and acts as a huge reservoir. Willar Lake has been selected under the Ramsar list in 1990. The lake is characterized with extensive marshes of emergent and floating vegetation. Water chestnut trapanadans of the lake is also the source of revenue for the government. The lake supports fishing industry and considered as a valuable source of water for irrigation and domestic use. The lake is also important for wintering, staging and breeding of many bird species. Loss of biodiversity due to human interference is quite apparent in the lake. Degrading water quality due to effluents brought by the river Jhelum is also a major threat to lake. 4. Harike Lake. Harike wetland is one of largest man-made wetland of northern India, situated at the confluence of Beas and Sutlej River. It has been selected under the Ramsar site in 1990. In the year 1992, it was selected as a wildlife sanctuary. It provides an important space for staging and breeding of birds. Approximately 1 lakh winged guests like bills, Siberian gills, shelduck spoon, common coot, Shalar vision, rudi, pontel, etc. come from the Russia, Siberia, Kazakhstan and other cold regions during the winter to the wetland. Harike wetland has a rich Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Diversity of fish fauna, where 61 fish species of 17 families and 35 genera are found. The Harike wetland has faced the problem of extensive pollution leading to the problem of excessive growth of hyacinth and encroachment of areas for agricultural activities. 5. Loktak Lake. Loktak Lake of Manipur, having an area of 26,600 hectares, has been added to the Ramsar list in 1990. Thick floating weeds covered with soil fumids are a major characteristic feature of this lake. Except being used for irrigational and domestic purposes, it is an important place for wintering and staging of water birds, particularly ducks. The lake has also been included on the Montreux record in 1993 due to threats to its ecology such as infestation of water hyacinth, degrading water quality along with deforestation in the catchment area. Even the construction of a multi-purpose dam has caused the extinction of several native fish species. 6. Sambar Lake, a large saline lake of Rajasthan state, situated within the municipality of Jaipur district. It has been designated a Ramsar site in 1990. This shallow wetland is fed by 4 streams named Menda, Runpangar, Kondaland, Karyanwick. The wetland is a key wintering area for pink flamingos and other birds migrating from northern Asia, Siberia and other cold regions. The growing algae and bacteria in the lake provide striking water colors. Some human activities like salt production and livestock grazing are performed near the lake. 7. Kanjli. Kanjli is man-made wetland that came into existence after making a small barrage over Kali Bind for irrigation purposes in 1870. It spreads over 183 hectares in area in northern Punjab. The site has been selected as Ramsar site in the year 2002 under the criteria 3 because it supports a considerable diversity of aquatic, mesophytic, and terrestrial flora and fauna. From religious point of view, it is the most significant as it is associated with the first Sikh Guru Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji. The site faces the problem of water pollution due to excessive use of areas for agricultural activities. In spite of this, deforestation and unwanted grazing further increase the problem. 8. Ropar Wetland. Ropar Wetland is a man-made wetland formed by the construction of a dam over Sutlej River. Ropar Wetland is located in eastern parts of Punjab. Ropar. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Wetland was selected under Ramsar list in 2002. A number of migratory as well as native birds visit the areas in winter seasons. It is also a breeding place for Indian otter, sambar, hog deer and several reptiles. Due to their specific location in shivalic foot zones, wetland is mainly affected by higher amount of siltation in the wetland. 9. Ashtotamudi Wetland. Ashtotamudi Wetland of Kerala State has been designated as Ramsar Site in 2002. The wetland is an estuarine covering an area of 61,400 hectares. The Ashtotamudi wetland ecosystem supports a large number of mangrove species, 40 associated plant species and 57 species of birds including 6 migratory bird species. Availability of 100 fish species sustain the fishing industry around the wetland. Oil spills from fishing boats along with enhancing population density and urban extension pose threats to the wetland in terms of pollution and encroachment of wetland areas. 10. Bhitarkanika mangroves. Bhitarkanika mangroves, a 65,000 hectares wide beach of Odisha, was enlisted as Ramsar Site of Wetlands in 2002. The conservation practices for mangroves, from last 25 years along the Indian coast, have made the site one of the best known wildlife sanctuaries. Some beaches nearby this site are nesting sites for the largest known olive ridley sea turtles and largest number of saltwater crocodiles in the country, with nearly 700 Crocodylus porosus. Among the 58 recorded species of mangroves in India, 55 species are found in Bhitarkanika, which made it wider mangrove diversity than in the Sundarbans. Some traditional activities like harvesting of food, fuel wood, medicines, tannins, and construction materials were done in sustainable manner, but due to population pressures and encroachment of the area may threaten the equilibrium. 11. Boj Wetland. 2 lakes upper and lower, which were created during different time spans, collectively called Boj Wetland area of 3,201 ha, in Madhya Pradesh state, was recognized as Ramsar Site in 2002. The 2 man-made reservoirs, Upper Lake, created 11th century by construction of an earthen dam over the Kolins River, and the Lower Lake was constructed nearly 200 years ago from the leakage of the Upper Lake. These lakes are rich in biodiversity, native and migratory birds. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Insects, natural and cultured fish species, amphibians, reptiles, macrophytes, zooplankton and phytoplankton. 12. Deeper Beel. In Assam state, 4,000 hectares wide permanent freshwater lake, was recognized as Ramsar Site in 2002. It was a former channel of the Brahmaputra River, which has a great biological importance. The Beel is a staging site for migratory winged birds with the largest concentrations of aquatic birds in Assam. Some of the globally threatened species of birds like spot-billed pelican, Pelecanus philippensis, Bayer's Pochard Aethiaberry, and lesser and greater adjutant stork can be found here. Availability of 50 fish species in the wetland provide livelihoods for a number of people living in surrounding villages. Nymphaea nuts and flowers, seeds of the giant water lily euryale, medicinal plants, ornamental fish, and ferox are major revenue sources in local markets also. Overfishing, hunting, pollution from pesticides and fertilizers, and infestation by water hyacinth Eichhornia crassipes are potential threats to the site. 13. East Calcutta Wetland. East Calcutta Wetland is a world-renowned model of multiple-use wetlands with resource recovery systems which purely developed by local people covering an area of 12,500 hectares. It was designated as Ramsar Site in 2002. The wetland provides an urban facility by treating the city's wastewater which is further utilized for pisciculture and agriculture. Thus the system is described as one of the rare examples of environmental protection and development management where a complex ecological process has been adopted by the local farmers for mastering the resource recovery activities, RIS. Wetland is the major source of livelihoods for people. It provides about 150 tons of fresh vegetables on daily basis, and approximately 10,500 tons of table fish per year. Unauthorized use of the wastewater outfall channels by industries adds metals to water and canal sludge which is a major threat to the water. 14. Kalaru Lake. Kalaru Lake is located in Andhra Pradesh covering 90,100 hectares of area. It is a natural eutrophic lake, situated between the 2 major river basins of Godavari and Krishna. This is fed by 2 seasonal rivers and a number of drains and channels. The lake is a habitat for many native and migratory birds, including gray pelican. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Pelecanus philippensis and sustains both culture and capture fisheries along with the agriculture. The lake is facing many damages and losses due to flooding in monsoon seasons and partial drying during summers. Adequate management and conservation is seriously required in this area. 15. Point Kalimer Wildlife and Bird Sanctuary. Point Kalimer Wildlife and Bird Sanctuary of Tamil Nadu State, spread over 38,500 hectares area was enlisted under Ramsar Site in 2002. About 257 species of birds, 119 are water birds, including the vulnerable species like gray pelican, Pelecanus philippensis, spoonbill sandpiper, Urinorinchus pygmaeus, and flamingos are found here. The site is a perfect breeding ground for many commercially important species of fish, prawns and crabs. The decreasing inflow of freshwater, increasing brackish groundwater due to historical salt works, illegal collection of firewood and spread of Prosopis chilensis Chilean mesquite are major threats to the sanctuary. 16. Pong Dam Lake. Pong Dam Lake covers 15,662 hectares area of Himachal Pradesh state. In the foothills of Himalayas, on the northern edge of the Indo-Gangetic Plain, a reservoir was created in 1975 which was later on considered as Ramsar Site in 2002 as Pong Dam Lake. More than 220 bird species along with 54 species of waterfowl are found in this lake. In terms of hydrological values, the lake serves as groundwater recharge, monsoon season flood prevention, silt trapping and prevention of soil erosion, both in the surroundings and downstream due to water regulation and electricity generation. A lucrative fishery with 27 fish species of the lake gives livelihood to approximately 1,000 families directly or indirectly. 17. Sasthamkota Lake. Sasthamkota, a freshwater lake, is located in the state Kerala with 373 hectares area. This spring-fed lake is the source of drinking water for 500,000 people in the Kollam district of Kerala state. About 27 freshwater fish species are present. Due to non-availability of common salts or other minerals, the lake could not support any water plant. A larva called Cababorus is abundant which eliminates bacteria from the water, thus, the lake has exceptional purity of water. 18. Samoriri. Samoriri is located at 4,595 meters above sea level in the state of Jammu and Kashmir and is spread over 12,000 hectares with wet meadows and borax-laden wetlands. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Along the shores. This site is the only breeding ground outside China for the most endangered cranes, black-necked crane, Grus nigricollis, and only breeding ground for bar-headed geese in India. While the area is on the way of ancient trade routes and now major trekking routes, but the wetland is considered sacred by local Buddhist communities and the water is not used by them. 19. Vembanad Coal Wetland. Vembanad Coal Wetland is the largest brackish, humid tropical wetland on the southwest coast of India. The 151,250 hectares area of the state Kerala is under this wetland, which is fed by 10 rivers, and this estuarine area was recognized as Ramsar site in 2002. Approximately 90 species of resident birds, 50 species of migratory birds are found in wetland area. Flood protection for densely populated coastal areas of 3 districts of Kerala is getting major benefits from the wetland. This also helps for groundwater recharge, which further supplies water for the region. 20. Chandertal Wetland. Chandertal Wetland is situated in Himachal Pradesh. Chandertal is a high-altitude lake near Pir Panchal Ranges and Kunzum Pass joining the Himalayas. It is spread over 49 hectares. It was selected under Ramsar List 2005. The wetland supports many species like kestrel, golden eagle, chow, red fox, Himalayan ibex, blue sheep black and ring stilt. It also supports endangered species. Snow leopard comes under the red list of sites in IUCN. The area faces problems of deforestation and overgrazing. The Chandertal wetland is a center of tourist attraction mainly in summer seasons, but lack of sanitation facilities leads to the problem of littering. For the conservation of area fund has been released under the Ecotourism Services. The State Council for Science, Technology and Environment is a coordination committee that seeks the management activities. 21. Horeka Wetland. Horeka Wetland is a natural permanent water body that is fed by Jhelum River situated in Jammu and Kashmir. It is situated at 1584 m above sea level in the northwest province of Kashmir. The wetland is spread over 1375 hectares. The wetland was selected under Ramsar List in 2005. A number of migratory and native waterfowl are supported by Horeka Wetland. Large egret, common shelduck, little. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Cormorant, great crested grebe, tufted duck and endangered white-eyed pochard visit wetland areas in winter season. 22. Renuka Wetland. Renuka Wetland is a natural wetland selected as Ramsar site in 2005. The wetland is fed by a small Jiri River and natural springs. It covers an area of 20 hectares situated in Himachal Pradesh. A number of pilgrims and tourists visit the place, because of its religious values in Hindu religion, as it is named after the mother of Parshuram. It is the home of more than 443 species of fauna, crimson-breasted barbet, pheasants, bulbul, egrets, herons, mayna, and lapwing. The sambar, gorals and barking deer are common in areas. The area faces the problem of siltation owing to deforestation in hilly region. 23. Rudrasagar Lake. Rudrasagar Lake 240 hectares area is a lowland reservoirs nourished by the 3 streams of Gumti River situated in Tripura state. A plentiful amount of freshwater fishes mainly chitala, ompokpabda, labiobata etc. are found here. It also provides a habitat space for 3 striped roof turtle Kachuga dongoka that are listed under IUCN Red List. The human pressure, encroachment of areas for agricultural activities and soil erosion in the areas are major threats faced by the wetland. 24. Suransar Mansar Lake. It is a non-permanent freshwater lake situated in semi-arid Punjab plains of Jammu and Kashmir covering about 350 hectares. Many red list species such as Lissamese punctate, Mansariella lacustris and Aspidorus gangeticus are found in Suransar Mansar Lake. Many waterfowls like Athia fuligula, Gallinula chloropus, Podiceps nigricolisa and Fulica atra exist in the region. The site has been worshipped by people as many temples are located around the lake, which has a connection with Mahabharata era. Major threat is agricultural runoff, religious bathing, tourists littering and cremation ceremonies. 25. Upper Ganga River. It is located in Uttar Pradesh. The Upper Ganga River was selected under Ramsar List in 2005. It spreads over an area of 26,590 hectares. The IUCN red-listed species include gharial, Ganges river dolphin, crocodile, otters, 6 species of turtles, 82 species of fish and many species of birds are supported by the area. In terms of flora, high medicinal value tree includes Dalbergia sisu. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Eucalyptus globalis, Siraca indica, Ficus bengalensis, Azadiracta indica and aquatic icorina. The areas face the problems of discharge of untreated waste, agricultural runoff and religious waste like cremation rituals. 26. Nalsaravar. Nalsaravar Bird Sanctuary, spread over 12,000 hectares, located in Gujarat was selected as Ramsar site in 2012. The Nalsaravar is one of largest natural fresh wetland lake in Thar region. The area provides a suitable habitat for breeding and feeding of flora and fauna. More than 200 bird species visit both in summer and winter seasons. The numbers change with respect to season, such as average 174,128 individuals recorded throughout the winter and 50,000 in the summer. The wetland is also a lifeline for endangered Indian wild ass that uses areas in dry season. The Nalsaravar also provides water for drinking and irrigation uses. Paper 03 4. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. 1. Introduction. Agroforestry is an age-old practice that makes use of land system for the production of trees, crops or animals. Agroforestry has the potential to enhance the productivity, maintain the nutrient balance and protect the nature. Agroforestry plays 2 important roles, i.e., service and productive role. Agroforestry systems are dominated by trees to ensure environmental protection and sustainable agriculture. Agroforestry is a practice that is widely characterized by plants and their arrangement, environment and socio-economic functioning. Facets of agroforestry include forestry and tree planting activities. In this practice, farmers are involved and they derive benefits for their daily requirements. Other facets of agroforestry include natural silvopastures, forest grazing and savannas. Definitions of agroforestry. The cropping pattern that involves the combining of trees, shrubs, bamboos, etc. with animals or herbaceous crops is defined as agroforestry. or land use and sustainable management system that enhances agricultural production and combines forest plants, animals, tree crops, and agricultural crops is known as agroforestry. Or agroforestry is a management practice that involves the incorporation of trees in agricultural landscape and on farms. Agroforestry leads to social, economic, and environmental benefits due to diversified and sustainable production. In general, ecological and socio-economic interactions take place between various components of agroforestry systems. It means that two or more than two species of plants are present in agroforestry system. The output of agroforestry system will always be two or more than two. Agroforestry cycle takes more than 1 year for completion, and the agroforestry system have much more complexity than monocropping system. 2. Historical background of agroforestry. Around 700 BC, man changed his living style and started producing food irrespective of food gathering and hunting. 5. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Coexistence of horticulture with agriculture has been common in India from 500 BC to 1st century AD. Proto-historic Chalcolithic periods of civilization provide evidences regarding the cultivation of different varieties of fruits, livestock requirement, cattle breeding, and mixed economy in agriculture. However, in India, pre-Neolithic period showed the happening of plant husbandry under arid climatic zone. This practice has been used by the farmers of Central America for a long time. Farmers plant 24 species of plants in different plains on a small piece of land. Slash and burn was a general custom until Middle Ages in Europe for the cultivation of food crops. Germany and Finland are also practicing this farming system for the last century. 3. Classification of agroforestry. Agroforestry system has been classified by the researchers on the basis of structural, functional, and socio-economic aspects. I. Structural basis. The structural classification depends on different components of the agroforestry system and the individual role or function of each component. This type of classification is totally dependent on the type of components and their arrangement. Figure 1. Schematic representation of structural classification. Structural classification. Arrangement of components. Nature of components. Spatial temporal. 6. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Nature of the components. Agroforestry systems on the basis of nature of the components include 1. Agric-silviculture, plantation of trees and crops. 2. Agri-horticulture, plantation of fruit trees and crops. 3. Agri-silvi-horticulture, plantation of trees, fruit trees and crops. 4. Agri-silvipasture, plantation of trees, crops and pasture animals. 5. Alley cropping, plantation of perennial hedges and crops. 6. Aquaforestry, combination of trees and fishes. 7. Boundary plantation, plantation of trees on boundaries along with the crops. 8. Block plantation, block of trees and crops. 9. Energy plantation, combination of trees and crops during initial years. 10. Silviolericulture, plantation of trees and vegetables. 11. Hortiolericulture, plantation of fruit trees and vegetables. 12. Hortipasture, combination of fruit trees and pasture animals. 13. Silvipasture, combination of trees and pasture animals. 14. Shelter belts, combination of trees and crops. 15. Forage forestry, combination of forage trees and pastures. 16. Wind breaks, plantation of trees and crops. 17. Silvi or horti sericulture, combination of trees or fruit trees and sericulture. 18. Horti apiculture, combination of fruit trees and honeybees. 19. Aquaforestry, combination of trees and fishes. 20. Homestead, multiple combinations of fruit trees, vegetables, etc. B. Arrangement of components. Spatial arrangement. Agroforestry mixture that results in dense or sparse stands of plants is known as spatial arrangement. The species can be planted at varying widths or zones. Alley cropping, hedgerow intercropping represents common example of zonal pattern. Temporal arrangement. Conventional shifting cultivation cycle is an extreme example of temporal arrangement. When a woody species is planted, then this type of arrangement. 7. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Involves 2 to 4 years of cropping and 15 years of fallow cycle. Temporal arrangements are also termed as overlapping, coincident, concomitant, interpolated, and separate. 2. Functional basis of classification. This classification is based on the major function of the woody components, and it can be productive or protective. Productivity and sustainability are the fundamental attributes of the agroforestry systems. Figure 2. Diagrammatic representation of functional classification of productive functions. Productive functions of agroforestry system includes fodder, fuel wood, gums, resins, waxes, furniture wood, other products. B. Protective functions. Protective functions of agroforestry systems include functional classification, productive function, protective function. 8. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Shelter belt, wind break, soil conservation, soil improvement, moisture conservation, shade. 3. Socioeconomic basis of agroforestry systems. This type of classification considers level of inputs, low or high, management, intensity, scale, and commercial goals. Figure 3. Diagrammatic representation of socioeconomic classification. A commercial system. Commercial means production of particular product on large scale. The commercialization process may be owned by government, private, or corporate. Payment base of labor is either normal or contract base. Examples include production of agricultural crops on commercial scale, production of shade-tolerant crop plants like tea, cacao, and coffee. Socioeconomic classification, commercial system, intermediate system, subsistence system. 9. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. Commercial grazing under timber and pulp plantations. B. Intermediate agroforestry system. This system is known as an intermediate system since it comes in between commercial and subsistence scale of perennial cash crop production. Examples: plantation of cacao, coffee, fruit trees and timber species are included in intermediate agroforestry system. C. Subsistence agroforestry system. This system involves the land use for satisfying basic needs. This system is managed primarily by the owner and his family. Examples: production of cash crops, traditional shifting cultivation. 4. Major agroforestry practices and their agroecological adaptability. Agroforestry practices have been categorized into 3 major classes: A. Agrisilvicultural. B. Silvi or silvopastoral. C. Agrosilvopastoral or agrisilvopastoral. Table 1. Major agroforestry practices and their agroecological adaptability. Agroforestry practice. Agroecological adaptability. Major components. Agrisilvicultural systems. Alley cropping. Subhumid and humid areas. Leguminous in common. Agricultural crops. Home gardens. All ecological regions. Fruit trees, vines, woody species and shade tolerant. 10. Paper 03. Biodiversity and conservation. Agricultural plants. Improved fallow in shifting cultivation areas. Leguminous in common. Agricultural crops. Fuelwood in all ecological regions. Firewood species N. Agricultural crops. Multi-layer tree gardens. Fertile areas. Woody components and sometimes shade-tolerant plants are also present. Herbaceous plants are usually absent. Multi-purpose trees on crop lands. In all ecological regions. Multi-purpose trees, fruit trees and common agricultural crops. Plantation crop combinations. Tropical humid, subhumid highlands or humid lowlands. Coffee, cacao, fruit trees, coconut, fodder, fuelwood and shade-tolerant species. Shelter breaks, wind breaks and live hedges. In wind-prone areas. Tall trees and agricultural crops. Tanya in all ecological regions. Forestry species and common agricultural crops. Trees and soil reclamation and conservation. Sloping areas. Multi-purpose tress, fruit trees and common agricultural species. Silvopastoral systems. Trees in combination with pasture animals. Protein banks. Areas with person, land ratio high. Leguminous and fodder trees. Trees on rangeland or pastures. Grazing areas. Multi-purpose woody trees, fodder for grazing animals and animals are also present. Plantation copse with pastures. Areas having less pressure on plantation crops, animals and 11. Paper 03. Biodiversity and conservation. An animal's plantation crop lands. Fodder for grazing animals. Agrosilvopastoral systems. Multi-purpose woody hedgerows. In humid and subhumid areas. Shrubs and trees. Aquaforestry. Lowlands. Trees and shrubs that are preferred by fish. Apiculture with trees. It depends on the feasibility of agriculture. Honey-producing components are present. Multi-purpose woodlots. Various ecological zones. Multi-purpose species are present. Home gardens involving animals. All ecological regions. Fruit trees and woody species are present. Source: Nair, PKR, 1993. 5. Traditional systems of agroforestry in India. Shifting cultivation. This farming system is practiced in northeastern regions having high rainfall. Forest land is cleared by slashing method and then the area is set on fire. Originally the fallow period was 10 to 20 years, but currently it has been reduced to 2 to 5 years. The reason for this drastic reduction in fallow period was due to an increase in population pressure. An alternate that can be advocated to shifting cultivation is farming system approach. B. Home gardens, homesteads. An operational system that involves the production of tree crops along with poultry, fish farming and livestock, so as to fulfill the basic requirements of farmers. This practice is an old age one that is particularly practiced in coastal states like Tamil Nadu, Assam, Kerala, West Bengal, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. This agroforestry system involves a wide range of variation in crops, trees and species. The variation depends upon the holding size, microclimate and the people living in the homesteads. 12. Paper 03. Biodiversity and conservation. The major trees that are grown in home gardens are mango, citrus, banana, papaya, and other multi-purpose trees. Food crops include sweet potato, elephant yam, cassava, taro and dioscorea. The major components of homesteads are poultry and cattle. Therefore, kazungula, guinea grass and Guatemala are frequently grown as forages in homesteads. The intimate mixing of various components of homesteads led to complex interaction among plants, soil, environmental factors and nutrition. The trees that are grown include mango, Grevillea robusta, jack and teak trees. C. Scattered trees on farm lands. This practice involves the production of scattered trees on farm lands. This practice is an old one and has not undergone any sort of modification over the centuries. E.g., Prosopis cineraria and Fateherbia albida. System complexity and species diversity keeps on increasing with an increase in rainfall. Therefore, humid areas show the proliferation of multi-storied home gardens while dry areas show two-tiered canopy configuration. Trees grown via this practice provide fuel wood, fodder, shade, vegetables, fruits and medicinal products. D. Trees on farm boundaries. Sometimes trees that are grown in agricultural fields are also grown along farm boundaries. For example, eucalyptus and populus trees are grown along the boundaries of paddy fields in Punjab and Haryana. Bamboo trees are grown all along the irrigation channels in Sikkim. Plantation of Borassus palm is more frequent in coastal areas of Andhra Pradesh. E. Wood lots. This practice involves the growth of trees in the form of separate blocks along the agricultural fields. This practice is under continuous expansion since there is shortage of fuel wood. E.g., demand of bamboo poles in orange orchards in Nagpur. F. Shelter belt. This practice involves the usage of local vegetation or dead wood to build shelter belts so as to check wind velocity. E.g., Leptodenia pyrotechnica and Crotalaria burhia. G. Trees on rangelands. 13. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. The most frequent trees that are grown in grazing lands are Prosopis juliflora, P. cineraria, and Acacia nilotica. H. Aquaforestry. This practice involves the prawn and fish cultivation in saline water and coconut production along the ponds. These trees produce litter which is used as feed by fish. This practice is more prevalent along Andhra coast. I. Apiculture with trees. Bees make hive on the trees that are planted along the coastal areas. This practice is more prevalent in the agroforestry system that is rich in floral diversity. 6. Types of tree species in agroforestry system. I. Utilization purpose trees. A fodder cum fuelwood species, Albizia lebic, a Procera, a Amara, Cispania grandiflora etc. B. Fuelwood and timber species, Acacia nilotica, Albizia lebic, Azadiracta indica, Dalbergia sisu, Pongamia pinnata, Melia azadirach, Tectona grandis etc. C. Fruit and vegetable species, Mangifera indica, Maduca indica, Amona reticulate etc. D. Softwood and pulpwood species, Bombax ceiba, Populus deltoides, Ailanthus triphysa. 2. Multipurpose trees. A. Trees grown in good annual rainfall areas. Morus alba. Populus sp. Cispania sp. Terminalia sp. B. Trees grown in moderate rainfall areas. Acacia nilotica albizia lebic. 14. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. Tamarindus indica. Eucalyptus sp. C. Tress grown in poor rainfall areas. Acacia nilotica. Acacia catechu. Eucalyptus camadulensis Prosopis juliflora. 3. Fodder trees. Fodder provides protein, fats, carbohydrates, minerals, energy and fats to the animals so that they can stay alive. Acacia arabica. Acacia catechu. Acacia nilotica. Albizia lebic. Azadiracta indica. Dalbergia sisu. Ficus bengalensis. Mangifera indica. Melia azadirach. Morus alba Pongamia pinnata. 7. Areas suitable for agroforestry system. The areas that are suitable for agroforestry include a field boundaries. B. Cultivable lands. C. Cultivable waste. D. Old fallows. E. Other areas where there are chances for the incorporation of agroforestry. 8. Applications of agroforestry. Resource conservation. Conservation of natural resources like water, plants and lands can be carried out by watershed management. Conservation is an important aspect since it meets 15. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. The socio-economic needs of human beings. However, degraded land can be conserved or improved by agroforestry practice. It reduces runoff, controls erosion, enhances water table, and improves profitability, productivity and soil moisture conservation. B. Farming system. Natural resource management can be carried out via agroforestry practice. Therefore, with the change in economy, there is a need to address those technologies that are related to the integrated production of crops, livestock, fisheries and perennials. Diversification can lead to major shift in agricultural production. The shift in agricultural production can be boosted due to urbanization, budding of personal incomes and incorporation of world markets. C. Biodiversity conservation. India is rich in biodiversity. Innovation in agroforestry contributes towards biodiversity conservation via conservation development approach. D. Carbon sequestration. Agroforestry system serves as mitigation strategy and can also be employed for carbon sequestration. Agroforestry provides a cost-effective means through various land use practices for carbon sequestration. E. Enhancement in soil fertility and structure. Plantation of woody species results in the enhancement and improvement of soil fertility. The reasons for an increase in soil fertility is: leaf litter leads to the addition of organic matter of soil. Effective utilization of nutrients and efficient nutrient cycling. Nitrogen fixation by microorganisms, addition of nutrients beyond the nutrient-absorbing zone of soil. 9. Criteria for designing agroforestry. The following criteria should be fulfilled for a good agroforestry system. 16. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. Sustainability. With an improvement in sustainability of agricultural production system, the conservation goals can be achieved by agroforestry. B. Productivity. Productivity with agroforestry can be improved by various ways like improvement in the yield of associated crops, enhancing the labor efficiency, diversifying the crop production. C. Adoptability. Technical design of agroforestry does not matter. The only thing that matters is adoption of that design by the farmers. It clearly means that this technology should fulfill the environmental and social characteristics of the land use system. 10. Benefits of agroforestry. I. Yield of agricultural products is increased and quality of food is improved. E. Fuel, wood, fodder, furniture and other raw materials are produced from trees that fulfill the basic demands of farmers. Moreover, these products can also be put in sale in rural areas. E. Soil productivity potential is protected and improved. IV. Recycling of nutrients is permitted due to the decomposition of dead decaying organic matter like fruits, leaves and branches. B. Soil productivity is enhanced. B. Trees help in nitrogen fixation in a form that can be used by the leguminous plants. B. Soil erosion is reduced due to planting of trees and thereby soil permeability is also improved. B. Agroforestry provides various ecological niches. This results in the improvement of diversity and quality of wildlife. X. Agroforestry creates employment and farmers get income. As a result, socioeconomic condition is improved in rural areas. X. Climbing crops get support from agroforestry trees. 17. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. She. Agroforestry is responsible for the development of such type of land use systems that merge modern technologies with traditional experiences. The land use systems thus developed are well suited with the socio-cultural life of local people involved. She. Microclimate can be modified in terms of raising the humidity, minimizing rainfall, reducing wind velocity and extreme temperatures. She. Ecological system developed through agroforestry is more efficient in capturing solar energy and using vertical space. Exiv. Farmers get economic benefits of fuel wood, fruits, honey, fodder, forest and medicinal products. XV. Plantation of trees in agricultural fields reduces weed eradication costs. 11. Limitations of agroforestry system. I. Sometimes shade provided by trees is also responsible for lowering the yield and quality of agricultural crops that have been planted beneath the trees. E. Harvesting of trees results in mechanical damage to agricultural crops. E. Hand tilling or mechanization becomes difficult due to the presence of trees. IV. More labor is required. V. Due to the presence of higher number of trees, the moisture content in air also increases. Consequently, bacterial and fungal diseases occur more frequently. Therefore, yield of forage species and food crops get reduced. B. During the harvesting of trees, some nutrients are lost. Because nutrients are taken up and stored over longer periods of time by trees. B. Trees also compete with crops for moisture, light, space and nutrients. As a result, production of trees as well as crops gets reduced. 12. Issues in agroforestry. The following reasons are responsible for constraints experienced by small and marginal farmers. A. Lack of technical knowledge. 18. Paper O3 Biodiversity and conservation. B. Gestation period is longer. C. Inadequate and delayed availability of seedlings. D. No knowledge regarding market value. E. Plantation areas are weakly accessible. F. Marketing facilities are poor. G. Farmers do not get assured prices for wood and timber. H. Certain restrictions put by government on the cutting of trees from farmland. I. Sometimes premature seedlings are not able to withstand dry spells. J. People's participation in agroforestry system is poor. 13. Major differences between agriculture and agroforestry systems. A. Monitoring of agroforestry systems take longer time as compared to agricultural systems. B. Larger area needs to be established for agroforestry systems. Moreover, variation in crop performance is also expected. However, this is not the case with agricultural system. 14. Links of agroforestry systems. Agroforestry is a multi-locational, multidisciplinary and multifunctional system. This system is linked to several governmental and non-governmental organizations. These links are essential for coordination and to avoid duplication of the work. Four. Paper O3 Biodiversity and conservation. 3. Description 3.1 Introduction. Biodiversity prospecting, or bioprospecting, is the systematic and sustainable exploration of biochemical and genetic resources from the nature, and its further development into valuable products. Planet Earth harbors diversity which is currently estimated to be around 10 million species of plants, microbes and animals. These organisms and its genetic and biochemical constitution had been shaped by the process of evolution by natural selection for the last 3.5 billion years. Chemical tapestry of living beings are immensely complex and a vast majority of biologically active natural products are impossible to be chemically synthesized. Organisms harbors a rich panoply of biochemical and genetic resources that could potentially of immense use to the humanity. It is estimated that more than 90% of drugs currently in world's market came directly from organisms, especially plants. Recent advances in recombinant DNA technology enables us to explore wild genes from the organisms and cloning them to other organisms for various benefits. However, bioprospecting is an immensely time-consuming endeavor. As per the current estimates, only 1 in 250,000 natural samples would yield a commercially viable drug, and the development would take decades to complete. Under the umbrella term bioprospecting, all efforts of utilization of biodiversity for the benefit of human beings is covered. See the concept map. This include development of drugs either directly from the natural products, or the development from traditional medicinal candidates through in vitro screening of biological activities or through animal testing, development of natural products into industrial products such as dyes, anti-fouling compounds, paints, glues, cosmetics and so on, development of natural products to supplement agri-food industry through its direct use as food, food additives, dietary supplements, fodder and fertilizer. Development of natural products for biofuel as well as for carbon capture and sequestration, CCS, exploration and utilization of biodiversity for aesthetics, tourism. 5. Paper O3 Biodiversity and conservation. And horticulture, an exploration of biodiversity for wild genes, its cloning and further development of commercial products or genetically modified organisms. 3.2 Ethics of bioprospecting. Ethics of the exploration of natural resources is indeed very complex. Many stakeholders would claim the resources as their indigenous, cultural, national and other privileges and the benefits arising if any would need to be shared in a fair manner. Historically, the explorers and investors for bioprospecting hailed from developed countries and much of the bioprospecting had been happening in the developing countries. Reason for this trend is very clear. Much of the world's biodiversity is concentrated in tropics due to a number of factors. The most obvious among them is species energy relationship. The tropics get the maximum solar irradiation and subsequently this region supports maximum biodiversity, including human population. Owing to higher human population and higher human population density, the countries in the tropics have remained poorer than scarcely populated non-tropics. A number of biodiversity hotspots have been described across the world, regions with extraordinary species richness and endemism, when some species are found at these locations that are not found elsewhere in the world, and almost the entire of these hotspots are situated in developing countries in the tropics. Some of the noteworthy countries that have historically been target of bioprospecting include Peru, Costa Rica, Brazil, Jamaica, Kenya, Madagascar and India. World's 10 megadivers hotspots are presented in Table 1. 6. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. Table 1. 10 of the world's megadiverse hotspots. Adapted from Mittermeier et al. 1999. No hotspot plant species endemic species. 1 Tropical Andes 45000-20000, 2 Peninsular Malaysia and Western Indonesia. 25000-15000. The explorers and the downstream bioprospecting industries from Europe had, until very recently, been in fact exploiting the tropical countries with virtually no benefit sharing. One example is the development of anti-cancer drugs vincristine and vinblastine. These drugs were discovered by scientists from American pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly and University of Western Ontario, Canada respectively, in 1960s from the plant Rosy periwinkle, native to Madagascar. Until the discovery of these. 7. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. Alkaloids. The plant had been part of the traditional folk medicine of Madagascar for the treatment of diabetes. The bioprospectors extracted these vinca alkaloids that later turned out to be commercially successful chemotherapeutic drugs. However, neither the American company nor the Canadian university shared any of the generated revenue with Madagascar. Another example is when American corporation Ricetech attempted to patent certain varieties of long-grain Indian rice varieties including basmati rice. Since then, thanks to the intervention of Indian government, most of the claims of patent were invalidated and international patents of this firm got revoked. Yet another example is when American pharmaceutical firm W.R. Grace & Company applied for potent antifungal drugs extracted from neem tree. In fact, neem tree extracts had traditionally been used for a wide variety of diseases as part of Ayurveda in India, and a number of groups opposed that patent application. Finally, in 2005, W.R. Grace & Company lost the final appeal for the rejection of the patent and the issue was resolved. Instead of randomly screening for potent biological activity of natural products, many of the bioprospecting companies and research groups target traditional and folk medicines for the samples, as chances are very high that these ethnobotanical remedies might harbor biologically active compounds, selected by hundreds of years of trial and error scenario of folk medicine. The bioprospecting firms usually negotiate the rates with the indigenous communities for per sample rates for the sample acquisition of these traditional medicines and herbal remedies, with no guaranteed downstream royalties or any further benefit sharing. Overexploitation of a number of medicinal plants, unfortunately, led to the extinctions of a number of valuable species. However, underprivileged countries of the tropics could not able to fund conservation drives, as they had a number of other imminent issues that need to be prioritized. Environmental conservationists proposed bioprospecting, if fair benefit sharing is ensured, as a potential revenue generator for the implementation of conservation measures in tropics. 8. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. 3.3 Governmental legislations. There had been no intergovernmental legislations or legal frameworks until 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil when United Nations adopted Convention of Biological Diversity, CBD that ensures fair benefit sharing between all the parties involved with the bioprospecting. There were in total 196 countries and European Union, notable exception is USA, ratified the CBD. The CBD made it compulsory to obtain prior informed consents PICs from the party providing biological resources, to protect indigenous and traditional knowledge of the communities involved. The convention also made agreements for technology transfer, impact assessment, technical and scientific cooperation, education and public awareness and provision for financial resources. The treaty was later modified to include transparent legal frameworks for equitable benefit sharing in the meeting held at Nagoya, Japan in 2010, a supplementary agreement commonly known as Nagoya Protocol. The protocol entered into force in 2014 and had been ratified by 96 parties including European Union till date, exceptions include US, Canada and Russia. These protocols made it compulsory to have prior informed consents PIC from the supplier of bioresource, for example, plant samples before collecting the biological materials. Implementation of this legislation by the ratified countries dramatically reduced illegal accession of biological materials, a term known as biopiracy. Post-CBD, such cases of suspected biopiracy could be trialed at International Court of Justice. The consequences of these two legislations were in fact mixed. While it constituted the first international legal framework for benefit sharing, the framework resulted in huge bureaucratic huddles to an extent that the pharmaceutical companies have rather started turning to combinatorial synthetic chemistry rather than bioprospecting for the search of new drugs. 9. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. 3.4 The scope of bioprospecting. Bioprospecting had been widely considered as a value creator for the global biodiversity resources, and the revenue generated can be effectively routed to fund conservation programs of the poor third world countries of the world. One key issue in this regard is the value of biological resources and the way to quantify it. Of course, no unambiguous way exists to quantify the value of the bioresources, and estimates have largely been subjective judgments. The estimate ranges between $21 per hectare of land to $9,177 per hectare. A reason for this disparity is that the latter estimate was based upon the data from biodiversity hotspots, epicenters of biodiversity with unusual species richness and endemism. More commonly, companies negotiate for per sample price with the supplying countries. In the early 1990s, Merck entered a deal with Costa Rican government for $1 million for a certain number of samples. In 2007, GlaxoSmithKline signed a pact with Brazilian firm for the collection of 30,000 samples that would translate to approximately $100 per sample. Novartis had an agreement with Brazilian government for $4 million for 10,000 samples. However, both of these agreements had to be cancelled as post-Nagoya Protocol. These agreements attracted a huge political controversy in Brazil. Classically, bioprospecting pharmaceutical firms target traditional, folk alternative medicines, as these herbal formulations might contain active biochemical. Reason for this is obvious. After tens of thousands of years of human evolution, we have identified and selected useful plants and employed them in traditional medicine. Use of traditional biological materials for modern medicine is called ethnomedicine or ethnopharmacology. Study of a particular region's plants for its human use through traditional knowledge of indigenous people is called ethnobotany. There are numerous examples. The drug quinine is developed from cinchona tree used in folk medicine of Peru. Artemisinin and its derivatives were isolated from traditional Chinese medicines, and alkaloids morphine and codeine from opium poppy used in various indigenous medicines worldwide. The compound podophyllitoxin isolated from Podophyllum peltatuma herb used in indigenous tribes of North America. 4. 10. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. Treating wart shad been developed into anti-cancer drug etoposide. To overcome a number of obstacles during rigorous drug development and formal approval processes, herbal formulations are often developed into polymolecular botanical supplements, functional foods and nutraceuticals. An example is BGR34, a purportedly anti-diabetic formulation developed by CSIR, India. While most of the bioprospecting is targeted towards traditional folk medicine to improve chances of success, a few goes for random screening of biological resources, albeit the procedure is extremely time-consuming. A famous example is U.S. National Cancer Institute's large-scale natural product screening for anti-cancer activities. The program screened extracts of over 70,000 plant species over the course of around 2 decades, and resulted in the development of just one drug, paclitaxel, a commercially successful chemotherapeutic agent and a blockbuster drug. On the other extreme, a dramatic example is when a Swiss microbiologist, on a family trip to Norway, collected a bit of soil and brought back to his lab in Switzerland. Further research led to the development of commercially successful immunosuppressant cyclosporin A. This blockbuster drug generates revenue of approximately $1 billion a year. As no agreements for fair trade existed between Switzerland and Norway, Norway lost its share in the profit of this blockbuster drug entirely to Switzerland. Another example of lucky finds include development of antibacterial drug rapamycin from soil samples from Easter Islands. Soil sample from Himalayas collected by a team led by Dr. Javed Agrawala of C. Sorumtech revealed its potent immunosuppressive and antibacterial properties. Further research led to the development of caryolomycin A pyridine-derived broad-spectrum antibiotic and immunosuppressant. Nostrum Pharmaceutical reportedly have brought this technology for $3 million, and Dr. Javed Agrawala was honored with prestigious Bhatnagar Award for his contribution by the Indian government. A major bias in play in global bioprospecting arena is that most of the explorations were targeted to that of the landmasses of the planet. However, more than 70% of Earth's surface is covered with the ocean and it harbors rich biodiversity. Only a very limited number of 11. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation. Companies, for example, Diversa Corporation and Magellan Bioscience, US and Marbank in Norway, are involved with bioprospecting of marine biological resources. Oceanic bioprospecting has its own dramatic success stories. One example is development of industrial enzyme ultra-thin from the genes isolated from archaebacterial living in deep-sea hydrothermal vent in Pacific Ocean. Gene coding for alkaline phosphatase enzyme collected from an oceanic shrimp species, which later developed as a successful PCR post-reaction cleanup tool, XOSAP-IT. Heat labile variant of the same enzyme, Antarctic phosphatase, had been originally isolated from Antarctic bioresource. Salinosporamide A from marine bacterium, Salinospora, is a protease inhibitor and a potential anti-cancer therapeutical currently in early-stage clinical trials. Actinocidin 743 trabectedin is an approved anti-cancer drug developed from a marine tunicate sea squirt Actinicidia turbinata. Luminase pulp bleaching enzyme was originally collected from the genes of geothermal sediment samples from Kamchatka, Russia. At present, the world has only 5 manned submersibles suitable for deep-sea diving for more than 3,000 meters, a major hurdle for the bioprospecting of world's oceans. Bioprospecting of open sea is also extremely rare. An estimate suggests that 99% of all ocean exploration for bioprospecting happens within territorial waters, part of the ocean that lies within 12 nautical miles or 22.5 kilometers from the coast. 3.5 Current status of bioprospecting. Owing to a number of issues, bioprospecting has come to a dramatic slowdown over the last 2 decades. The main reason for the current slowdown is increase in the bureaucratic hurdles post the enforcement of various international agreements, especially CBD and Nagoya Protocol. Prior to these landmark agreements, bioprospectors from the developed countries would undertake explorations to the poor tropics and they would negotiate with the indigenous communities or local governments for the rates for per sample acquisition. The samples, thus acquired after relatively less efforts, would be brought back to their established labs and subsequently be used for various bioactivity screening, and ultimately, if successful, to the development of drugs. Post-CBD and Nagoya protocols, however, sample acquisition. 12. Paper O3 Biodiversity and Conservation became such a major hurdle for the bioprospecting firms. It has increasingly become an impossible affair to acquire even a single sample from certain countries like Kenya that forbids all bioprospecting activities for the foreign companies. Another reason is the bioprospecting being extremely slow process that demand gargantuan efforts. Most of the world's traditional medicines are now known to the scientists, and the bioprospecting efforts to develop drugs from these ethnobotanicals, although straightforward and heuristically advantageous option, have now become saturated. Random screening of natural products is indeed extremely labor-intensive and time-consuming. It is now becoming increasingly clear that bioprospecting is highly unlikely to become an economic driver to support biodiversity conservation measures by the poor country. Drug discovery companies these days increasingly rely on combinatorial chemistry opposed to natural products for the source of new drugs. This approach works first by identifying potential targets of specific diseases. For example, an enzyme involved in the development of cancer that need to be inhibited. To inhibit an enzyme, its active site need to be blocked with an inhibitor molecule that can perfectly bind with the site. As the three-dimensional structure of this enzyme became available through analytical chemistry techniques such as NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy, a synthetic organic chemist can design an optimal molecule that can perfectly bind this target, its active site, like chiseling a perfect key to the lock. Synthesis of chemicals starting from scratch is called total synthesis. This combinatorial chemistry approach involves no natural products, and it is far straightforward and less laborious in comparison with traditional bioprospecting and screening approach. However, synthetic chemistry has its own limitations, and only small, structurally simple molecules can be synthesized as of today. As the natural products have been evolving through natural selection acting on them for billions of years, a richer and complex repertoire of structurally diverse compounds can be found in nature that are almost impossible to synthesize using synthetic chemistry approaches. However, with the advent of progress in structural chemistry, increasingly complex molecules are now being synthesized in world's laboratories, for instance, Taxol and cyclic depsipeptide. 13. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation. One intuitive approach that combines the elements of bioprospecting and combinatorial chemistry approaches is that instead of screening the natural product extracts and purified compounds for various bioactivities, scientists construct a systematic, annotated and curated computational database of the structures of purified natural products. One such database is InterBioscreen IBS, perhaps the most extensive database of natural products with more than 50,000 accessions freely available to anyone. Other noteworthy databases of natural products include Supernatural and Drug Discovery Portal of University of Strathclyde, UK. These databases can be searched to find potential structural matches, for example, an inhibitor molecule that perfectly bind with the three-dimensional structure of the enzyme that need to be targeted for the biological pathways, a process known as virtual or in silico screening through molecular docking. For example, using the IBS, Investor Singh and Bast, 2015, were able to identify natural products myricidin and epigallocatechol-2 compounds from green tea as potential inhibitors for a crucial pathway in the progression of many cancers, STAT3, signal transducer and activator of transcription 3. 4. Summary. 4.1 Biodiversity prospecting or bioprospecting is an umbrella term that is 4.1 Biodiversity prospecting or bioprospecting is an umbrella term that is used to refer the sustainable utilization of biodiversity for the betterment of human life. While the term is used most often to refer drug discovery using natural products, it also includes all other utilizations, including that for industrial applications, to support agri-food industry, for biofuel and carbon capture and sequestration, for aesthetical uses and also for the exploration of genes. 4.22 of the most important international legislations that govern sustainable biodiversity worldwide are CBD, UN Convention of Biodiversity, and Nagoya Protocol. These agreements are intended as a legal framework for equitable benefit sharing and prior informed consent of resource provider. However, these legal 14. Paper 03 Biodiversity and Conservation frameworks have proven itself to be an impediment for the large-scale bioprospecting missions, through the resultant bureaucratic huddles. 4.3 A major bias in bioprospecting had been lesser exploration of world's marine bioresources, even though oceans cover more than 70% of Earth's surface. Notwithstanding minimal explorations towards deep oceans, a number of drugs and commercial products have been marketed, warranting further developments in this sector. 4.4 Bioprospecting had classically been projected as an economic driver for supporting conservation schemes of poor countries. However, post-CBD and Nagoya Protocol implementation, bioprospecting had rather dramatically slowed down. At present, vast majority of pharmacological industries resort to combinatorial chemistry-assisted synthetic approach for the drug discovery. A novel two-step approach involving structural database of natural products and in silico docking screening studies with potential targets of biological pathways are increasingly getting popular.